All right, what's up, everybody? So, yesterday was my last day working my 9 to 5 job. And in this video, I want to talk about why I decided to walk away from a job that paid very well in the six figures, was very comfortable, very stable, very convenient. I had a good boss and a good team, yet I still chose to walk away because it wasn't aligned with my purpose and my value system. So in this video, I want to talk in more detail about that. And I'm going to tell it through a story. I want to walk you through kind of my life journey, or at least my career journey, so that you can understand more context behind my decision making and behind my thought processes. Okay. Now, I'll tell it kind of in three different chapters, if you will. The first is what I call the early years. The second being kind of a period of reflection and introspection. And then the third being more of a manifestation period. Okay. And throughout this story, there's different life lessons that I've learned and maybe some warnings and things like that. So just listen all the way through the end. Hopefully, some of these lessons that I share will resonate with you. And hopefully the full context of the story will help you in your own journey, your endeavor, whatever it is that you, wish for yourself career-wise. So with that, I'll start by talking about the first chapter. So my early years and my very first job, which was immediately following graduating from high school. So I was lucky enough to not have a first job like in a grocery store or in a fast food restaurant or something like that. I just happened to have a connection. It was sheer luck to work for the federal government for the summer, like as a full-time office job. So, I thought I already hit jackpot, right? Like I'm officially an adult. I just graduated high school and I'm already working like in an adult career professional type of job in an office setting. Now, one of the big problems with this was that I went from high school, which is this very like social environment, to this 9 to 5 office job where it was a bunch of scientists, okay? Everyone was just like closed off in their office, in their lab, doing whatever they were doing. And there was really no socializing. And I quickly became incredibly bored. I would be at work and I just couldn't wait for the time to leave to come because, I felt unfulfilled, unstimulated, all of that stuff when I was at work. And, at that time I was too young to really understand that was a signal, that was a red flag. I just thought that this is what people do. This is what adults do. You go to work, it's not fun, etc. So that was the first red flag, that I'm in this office environment and it's boring. But I was too young to recognize it, okay? Now, this was a temporary summer position, so it eventually ended and I started college and I was just working some campus jobs. No big deal. But when I was in college, at the beginning of my sophomore year, Hurricane Katrina happened. So I'm from New Orleans. I was in college in New Orleans at Tulane University. And with Hurricane Katrina, I won't go into details about the specifics of everything that happened, but that was a period of my life where I went from being a boy to being a man. Like the realities of life hit very hard with Hurricane Katrina. And one of those realities was that material possessions, all of these things that we identify ourselves with, things that we own and all of that stuff, can be taken away from you in an instant. And what you're left with is yourself, your relationships, and whatever sort of will you have to persevere. Everything else, all the homes that you live in, that you grow up in, the photographs that you keep, money that you have, possessions that you have, all of that stuff, it's external to you. It can be taken away. And, it's important to learn how to go through life without those things. Okay. Hold on to that thought, because this plays a role in my thought process moving forward. So, after that Hurricane Katrina experience, I'm back in, I'm in college. I'm an engineering student. And I decided, hey, I need to find a summer internship, like an engineering internship. So I applied to a bunch of firms in the New Orleans area. One of them responds to me and has me come in for an interview, and they basically hire me on the spot. So I start working this job. It's 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I have to wear a hard hat, steel toe boots, jeans, all of that stuff. And I also have to drive around in my car, okay? Like overseeing different crews and like construction crews and things like that. Now, the catch is that this was the height of summertime in Louisiana. And I'm in a car that has no air conditioning. And I'm wearing all of this stuff. So it was very grueling. It was very uncomfortable. But I worked that job, made some money, During the time of working this job, I got a call from the Defense Department to take on like an engineering, like a college level engineering position, with the Department of Defense. So I take that job, and that is more of like an office job, right? So I'm wearing, office attire. I'm going into this job. And as soon as I started working that job, I realized this is boring. Yet again, I'm uninterested. I'm feeling unfulfilled in this job. I'm feeling unmotivated. It was super comfortable. I was in an air-conditioned environment. I wasn't like sweating and all of that stuff that I was doing in the other job. But in that previous job, although I was extremely uncomfortable, I was not bored. I didn't feel unfulfilled. I just was very uncomfortable. And now I'm in this new job where I'm comfortable, but I am very unfulfilled. I'm very bored. On top of that, this was my first experience with a boss that I wasn't particularly enthusiastic about. So I had several bosses at this job. One of my bosses was quite possibly a narcissist. Let's just leave it at that. It wasn't a good experience. Another thing that really struck me in a very negative way was when I first started this job, I was sat down and someone told me, hey, we need to do some career planning for you so that you can figure out what you want to do over the next 30 years that you're here. And I was so taken aback by that comment. Like the assumption that I'm going to stick around in this same place, in this same job for the next 30 years, just was repulsive to me. Like maybe other people were okay with that, but I found it very alarming that I was in the company of people who just had that sort of mindset, right? Of like, yeah, 30 years from now, I'm going to be in the same position, or I'm going to be in the same place, That didn't sit too well with me. So that's just something that was a notable thing that happened. And I think that subconsciously, it kind of alarmed me, right? So I worked that position, federal government, for 5 years. But I eventually kind of reached the end of my rope and moved on to a different position in the private sector. Now, this wasn't nearly as bad of a position. It was a job. That's what it was. Learned a lot. Really kind of advanced my engineering career. I was in the oil and gas sector, so there was some office work, some field work where I actually go out to construction sites and all of that stuff. So it was a good learning experience, to say the least. All right. But there's one moment during this job that I can never forget. And there was an older engineer. This person was in the game for like 40 years. And he like storms out of his office one day. I guess he was just like fed up. And he was like, when are we going to get some interesting work around here? I'm tired of doing the same thing every day. And he just like walks off. And I remember me and then the other younger engineers just kind of looked at each other. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to be that guy when I'm older. I don't want to be 60, 65 years old complaining that I'm not doing interesting work, And so, yeah, that also kind of like influenced that added to all the other kind of experiences that started to lead towards me wanting to pursue a different direction in life. Now, one other important thing during this time was that I also ventured into entrepreneurship. So I started a nightclub party promotion company. I won't go into details on how I did this exactly, not in this video at least, but it was a 5-year run of me coordinating and putting together different parties, like contracting with different venues, flying celebrities in and all of that stuff. It was very difficult work, but it was also very rewarding work. You earned every dollar that you made, and when things went well, you made a lot of money. When things didn't go well, you lost a lot of money. But it was an empowering experience. Knowing that I had the keys to my own success was a feeling, it was somewhat of an addictive feeling. And it's something that I will never forget. And so that planted the first seed of, entrepreneurship into my mind. And from that point on, I knew that at some point in the future, I'm going to focus more on developing my own thing. Like being in this office environment, I haven't been in a single office environment that I found stimulating, that I found satisfying, fulfilling, or anything like that. But I was instantly fulfilled in my entrepreneurship journey. So I knew that at some point I was going to take my career in a different direction. So after a few years at this engineering firm, I ran my party promotion business. It was on the side, so I was still an engineer at the time. A few years at this last private sector engineering firm, I started to kind of look at what are the next options for me, right? Like what's the best option to position me for entrepreneurship and also for just making more money. And so I considered several things. I considered going back to get my master's in engineering. I was going to specialize in propulsion systems, but I had some conversations with some old professors of mine, and I came to my senses. That's absolutely crazy. I would never go back to get my master's in engineering. I wouldn't put myself through that again. I considered pursuing law school and potentially pursuing patent law. But I also had a couple of friends, one who was at Harvard Business School getting his MBA, another one who was at University of Chicago getting his MBA. And I was just kind of looking at how their lives were transpiring, and that was the most appealing to me, right? I figured, number one, getting a business degree would be a little bit more general and would open me up to more opportunities, but then also I felt like being in business school would just be like this transformative experience. And so that leads me to my MBA and my time in business school. And that's kind of the next chapter. All right. This is the beginning of that period of introspection where I started to kind of figure things out for myself. So When I was in business school, there was quite a few things that I really sorted out. The first was that this is a super competitive environment with people jockeying for the highest paying, like some of the most prestigious jobs that are out there, different consulting jobs and banking jobs and things like that. But what I noticed was that in this environment, people seem to put a huge emphasis on salary, on job title, so much so that they were sacrificing their mental health, sacrificing their physical health, sacrificing their well-being. It's almost like status and salary was a religion, was a sort of a god that people worshiped. And people would drop and discard many other important aspects of their lives in the name of getting that coveted job at this prestigious firm and making all of this money. And I found that to be somewhat alarming. I was off put by it, to say the least. And so this really opened my eyes to the fact that much of our society, because business school is like a microcosm of like the broader American capitalist system, and it made me starkly aware about the fact that we live in a system, in a matrix of sorts, where people are like myopically focused on upward career mobility and the financial success that comes with it and the social status that comes with it. But they are killing themselves in the process. Like their souls are dying in the process. And so making that observation, I was kind of like, I should try not to fall into that sort of thinking, right? Like I want to try to operate outside of that matrix. Now, another thing about my time in business school was I spent a lot of time traveling. I spent a lot of time outside of the United States. So I got extensive exposure to a way of living that wasn't necessarily aligned with the way that we live in the United States. Specifically, I spent about a month living in Ireland, in the Irish countryside. And I also spent a couple of months living in the Netherlands. And in both of those cases, I learned that I absolutely love being in these different cultures, learning about different cultures, interacting with people of these different cultures. It was like a deep rooted sense of enjoyment and satisfaction when I had these experiences. So another lesson learned, another thing that I learned about myself, right, was that there is something about exploration that brings me a lot of satisfaction and joy. And working in a 9-to-5 office type of setting is not a place of exploration. So I needed to be cognizant of that moving forward. All right. Now, after getting my MBA, I moved to Chicago, started a position with this consulting company. I immediately, like on day one, I looked around at everybody else who was coming into that job with the same credentials as myself, yet they were a level higher than me. It didn't sit well with me. It just affected my mental state. I was very unhappy with that. So I left very soon after starting that position. And then I moved over to a different job. Once again, this job, it was a good job, decent situation, decent pay, all of that stuff. But the theme continued. I continued to feel unsatisfied, unfulfilled. I felt like I was just really stuck in this rat race. Like I had already taken some time to go back to school to do something that I thought would advance my career. Yes, I'm getting paid more now. Yes, I'm at a higher level. I'm interacting with higher level people, like VPs of the company, CEO, things like that. But it was still just this wake up, go to work, come home, and you're feeding the machine, and it's like, what am I really working towards here? What am I getting out of life? I couldn't, those are questions that I couldn't really, I couldn't find an answer to in what I was doing. All right. Now, the thing, kind of like the cherry on top for all of this, was that once the global health crisis started, I was immediately let go from this position. So if any of you have ever been fired or laid off from a job, then you understand the experience where one moment you're there, you're working, the next moment they tell you you're no longer an employee here, pretty much effective immediately, and you get the cold shoulder, right? They just kind of turn their back on you and you're on your own. Now, that wasn't really the traumatic part. The traumatic part was the 10 months that came after, where I was looking for another job. So countless job applications, countless interviews. And there was something about that process that just completely flicked the switch in my mind. Because when you're applying to jobs and you're submitting hundreds of resumes, and they say all of these things like, make sure that you specially tailor your resume for the job, and you write a cover letter, and all of these things. You do that. The truth is that you're just going into the machine. Your resume will hardly ever get seen by a human, right? If you network your way, that's like a better way of doing it, but you still have to kind of like suck up to a lot of people. You have to be inauthentic. You have to talk about how interested you are in this company and that company. And the people who are inauthentic in a better way are the people who will do best landing the jobs, right? The people who could put on the mask the best and give the fanciest sounding answers and BS their way through interviews and things like that. Those are the people who will do the best in a job search. And I had a lot of trouble with that because I really just don't like to be inauthentic. And so as a result, I spent 10 months of applying, having different interviews, and just constantly being told, basically, we don't want to hire you for this position. We don't want to hire you for this position. And, I took issue with this because I felt like most of the people who interviewed me, most of these people who I'd be working for, were mediocre at best. They were mediocre people, or I guess like the younger generation these days calls it mid. They were very mid. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. Like, people who are just like, they're just kind of like middle managers in the system, in the matrix, in the capitalist machine, basically telling me like, yeah, we don't want to, we're not going to move forward with you, blah, 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 after making me go through all kinds of interviews and stuff. So that's when I realized, I'm like, you know what? I got let go from a job. Now I am in the middle of this job search, which is just painful and just a very terrible experience. And I'm like, I should never, ever in the future put myself in a position where another man can dictate my financial situation. Like, that just became a core principle that I would live by. I also realized it is super important to grow and build multiple sources of income so that if you are in a job, you have options. You have options to walk away if it's not suiting you. So that was another lesson. And then the third was that going through all of these experiences, going through these interviews, sitting in an office and feeling unfulfilled, all of these things kind of made me realize that maybe I'm just going about life completely wrong. Maybe life shouldn't be about, climbing your way up the corporate ladder, dealing with all of the BS, all of the office politics that comes with, your kind of 9-to-5 white collar types of jobs. Maybe life is meant to be lived in, let's just call it more leisure, a more kind of natural way. And so I had this revelation that what I want for myself more than anything is to have freedom of time, freedom to do what I want with my time, or at least more freedom to do so than your typical 9-to-5 job would allow for me. I also wanted freedom to just operate more autonomously, meaning I'm not going to have other people dictating how my life should be lived, other people dictating how much money I should make, other people dictating when I need to wake up and when I need to be in the office and when I can take vacation and all of those things. Like, I just fundamentally started to disagree with the notion that those choices should be in another person's hands. Why not take that power out of other people's hands, put it in my own hands? And so I just had this total mindset shift at that point, like during that period of unemployment. Okay, now I eventually did land a new job in a financial services space, and it is the job that I just left. So it was my most recent job. Fortunately, boss was great, work was cool, the team that I worked with was great. All around an absolutely amazing job experience, I will actually say. So there was nothing in particular wrong with the company, wrong with the people that I work with, or anything like that. But I was still working this office job, this 9-to-5, like something that I ultimately realized was no longer aligned with the direction that I wanted to go in life. And so I just kind of like hashed out a vision for myself. And I set a goal that I would retire from corporate America before I turned 40 years old. I can't remember, I might have been like 35 or so at the time that I started this job. But at this point, I had this vision that, okay, I'm going to find my way to the exit to get out of the corporate 9-to-5. And that entails a number of things, okay? And so that leads us to kind of the third chapter of my journey, which is the manifestation phase. So now that I had this vision, I needed to think about how to actually turn it into a reality. And so I did a number of things. Number one, I realized that I needed to live a life where the money I was making far exceeded the money that I was spending. So I really dove deep into a life of minimalism, embracing minimalism, and really questioning what's important, what aligns with my vision and what doesn't align with my vision. So I became really cognizant of how I was handling my money. And so a big part of that was, okay, if I want to retire, then number one, it helps to lower my expenses. I'm not going to go into super detail in this particular video about the specifics of like lowering my expenses and all of that stuff. That'll be a different video, but there's like some key things that I needed to do. One of those was finding out where I can live, a place that I can live that has a lower cost of living than where I currently am. So I'm in Chicago, and I just started investigating places internationally where that are good places for Americans to live if they're trying to go into early retirement, if they're trying to escape the rat race. And a number of places piqued my interest. One of those places I looked deeper into, and I ultimately decided that that's part of my future, is moving to this country, to this location that has a lower cost of living. Okay. On top of that, I just assessed my personal spending habits, my personal expenses, and I became a lot more diligent with how I was spending. So, I canceled various subscription services and things like that. But overall, I just intentionally lived a very modest life. That also includes not owning a car and all of that stuff. And once again, I'll talk about this in much more detail in a different video, but I just want to kind of give you the highlights. So another big piece of making sure that you make a lot more than what you spend. Yes, you cut back on your expenses, but you also want to try to find ways to make more money. So at the job, I'm making more overtime. My salary is increasing. But I also ventured into real estate. And so I had a small real estate portfolio previously, but I expanded my portfolio. I basically quadrupled my profit margins, through intentional acquisition of real estate assets. So that was another piece of diversifying my income, making sure I'm not fully reliant on one stream of income, especially a job, right? Taking advantage of different tax benefits that come with real estate and all of that stuff. And then the third was I really educated myself on digital sales, digital marketing. I created a digital product, digital programs and things like that, which provided yet another revenue stream. And then I also have forayed into crypto and things like that. I've been investing in Bitcoin since 2013. So that's another piece. I wouldn't quite call that an income stream, but that actually does play quite a major role in the whole plan. So in all, I diligently focused on reducing my cost of living. And even as I'm making more and more money, I'm finding more and more ways to lower the amount of money that I'm spending and to simplify my life. And then on the flip side, I'm also finding ways to add more streams of revenue to my, just adding more revenue streams, right? And throughout all of this, I'm still working this job. And as I mentioned, the people I work with were great. The job was great. But I'm showing up to work and I just don't feel it in myself. I don't have it in me to do the work. And I firmly believe that you should put yourself in a position, whatever it is that you do in life, you should try to put yourself in a position to where you're able to bring your best. You're able to bring your all into that situation. Because when you do that, then you can become the best. You could become part of that top 1% of the population in that particular thing. But if you're not fully committed to that thing, you're just going to be average and you're going to get average results, and you're just going to, I don't know, guys. I can't be average. It's just not acceptable to me. Okay, so I'm working in this job. I'm realizing I'm putting in mediocre level of effort. I'm going to get mediocre results out of it. But more importantly, by this time I had firmly believed that what's more important than me climbing the corporate ladder, What's more important than me, having the highest status job that I can have? What's more important than me, having the highest salary that I can have is having a healthy body, having a healthy mind, being in a solid, secure mental state, feeling joy and fulfillment in my work, feeling freedom and having that freeness to explore or to do with my time what I want to do with my time. Having the ability to slow down if I want to slow down. Like if I want to wake up and do nothing on a particular day and just go lay out on a beach, I want to be able to do that. That is way more important to me than, showing up to work every day and just doing stuff that just doesn't align with my values, that doesn't align with what I believe my purpose is in life. And so while the situation at work was comfortable, I knew that I needed to eventually make a move forward and align my life with my life's purpose. And because I put myself in a position, I took the steps to, be in a better financial situation, I'm now able to make a decision to just walk away from a job, that's paying six figures and is, super comfortable. I'm going to walk away from it, and I can now align myself in a way that is much more, true to my purpose, true to my vision and all of that stuff. And so I have had to go through this mental process of, is now the right time? Like, why not wait 6 months from now or a year from now? Like, why right now? And really, I just had to kind of tell myself, well, if not now, then when will ever be a right time? Like, there's never a right time for most major decisions in life. You're always going to feel like you're not ready. You're always going to feel like things will be better if you give it a little bit more time and all of that stuff. But, through my life, one thing that I realized is that time is very finite. We don't know how much time we actually have left on this planet. And time is taken for granted often. And so what I don't want to do is take for granted and make an assumption that I have a bunch of time left. Like, I don't know. 6 months from now, I don't know if I'll still be around. 6 years, 60 years, I don't know, right? And none of us really know. And so that was one thing that motivated me to make the decision now, was just an appreciation for how valuable time really is. Now, another thing that, kind of gave me the confidence to make this decision is that you've heard about my career. Like, I've done quite a few things throughout my career. I have the educational background and all of these things, a lot of different experiences. And so when I ask myself, what is the worst that can possibly happen? Like a reasonable expectation of the worst case scenario. For me, the worst case scenario is not being homeless. It's not being on the street begging for money. Like, that's just not a plausible worst case scenario for me, because I own homes. I own real estate. Like, I have some cash flow. I have some homes I can go to if I needed to, So for me, worst case scenario is maybe I'd have to come back to the United States. Maybe I'd have to go back into the workforce, get another 9-to-5 job, right? Maybe I'll be down a little bit of money, but money can always be made back. And so, I just kind of looked at my background, my experience, my education as a sort of insurance policy, right? Like, if things go poorly, if things don't go as planned, I have this insurance policy that I can fall back on. And so when you have a background, like when you have some sort of insurance policy, yours may be different than mine. You know, it could be as simple as you could go back to living in your parents' house. Like, that is an insurance policy. I'm not saying that's the greatest, but you know, you figure out your worst case scenario and you figure out what can you reasonably do in that scenario. That is your insurance policy. And once you have a firm insurance policy in place, that positions you to, you know, take these bolder actions, to walk away from a job, to pursue other things that are of greater interest to you, and all of that stuff. And that's what I'm doing. So at the end of the day, is this the right decision? I don't know, right? But what I do know is that I am leaning into my truth more. I am taking the steps that I need to take to align my life with my vision and with my purpose. And this is something that I think a lot of people are just too afraid to do because they're not taking the steps to put themselves in position to make these kind of transformational life changes and life decisions. And I think that that's probably why I'm even recording this video in the first place, because I hope that people can kind of listen to my story, listen to my thought process, and you know, it may help motivate and inspire you to take similar action if it's something that you are considering. So for me, this is where I'm at right now. I just, you know, yesterday was my last day at the job. I'm in a transition period. I don't exactly know what the future looks like. I have some things in mind, and I'll talk about it in some later videos. But I don't have a whole lot of clarity on what the future looks like. There's a lot of ambiguity there. But it will be an exciting adventure, and I'll definitely be sharing it with everyone. But hopefully you have, you know, found some inspiration in my story. If you did, then please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, like this video. I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my story. I walked away from a six-figure job after a long career, and after, you know, making observations and different insights that have really given me a lot more clarity in terms of what my purpose is in life. And I would argue that with most people, there are things in life that we enjoy that matter to us much more than just money, than status, than having the security of a job. I feel like, you know, we also place a lot of value in relationships that uplift us, that make us become the best version of ourselves. I believe we place a lot of value in freedom and autonomy. You know, I believe we place value in being able to dive deep into the things that we find most interesting, being able to explore different passion projects and creative pursuits and things like that. You know, there's a lot of things. Oh, I think we place a lot of, well, we should be placing a lot of value in our physical health, in our mental health. And, you know, a lot of people in that kind of 9-to-5 circuit put that on the back burner oftentimes. And, you know, it's just kind of a sad misplacement of priorities, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's my thought process. Huge reason why I've decided to make this decision. And, yeah, I mean, that's it, guys. Once again, subscribe, like the video. I have plenty of other things to talk about. So I will be chronicling my journey in the weeks and months and hopefully years to come. So until next time, always remember to get up, get out, and get after it. Peace.